Nosferatu is a rare film, the kind of movie that comes along not once a year, but maybe once a decade, if you're lucky. It's the kind of film that will lend a movie studio credit in the eyes of moviegoers for a long time. That's to say, Nosferatu, directed and screenplayed by Robert Eggers, will be a generational horror film that will be revisited over and over again for decades to come. Now, I have a knee jerk reaction to scoff at most remakes of classic movies. After all, it worked so well for the Lion King live action remake, Cheaper by the Dozen, and White Man Can't Jump.
You think this is funny?
But not this. This gothic horror, dare I say, epic. I mean, it lacks musicals, but it's certainly a journey with a grand scope. And I do not say this lightly. This might be the best film of the year. I know it is for some people, and it does so much to take the original and add to it while giving us a heroine to root for and a monster to fear. That actually might be a good talking point. This film is a remake of the 1922 silent film by the same name. Now, if you go back and watch the original, it's very much a product of its time. Egger, who is a noted fan of the film, took the time to really flesh out characters, their arcs, stories, motivations, while giving us a movie on a grand scale in a world that no longer exists. Count Orlok is menacing. Ellen and Thomas are a young couple that you root for. He sets out to make his fortune so that he and Ellen can start their lives and start a family. Something that's all too relatable. Ellen is almost addicted to his presence to stave off the loneliness that she feels in her soul. However, this movie recontextualizes a lot of things. It goes from her point of view. She sets the boundaries, she sets the foundation, and through that we see exactly what they're in for. On his journey, Thomas encounters numerous warning signs to turn back, but he persists until he is in the midst of a monster, Count Orlok, and we will dive more into him. But damn, he is a figure that harkens back to Darth Vader, an evil presence that is simply intimidating without having to do much. From there, we have multiple storylines running at the same time. Count Orlok pursuing Helen to an uncomfortable degree as his bride, while Helen tries to keep Thomas safe and survive. Thomas trying to keep his wife safe while outlasting a vampire, and they're aided by Friedrich, and the Green Goblin. And I'm not correcting that one. All of this, of course, mashes together in the third act that is shocking as it is poetically beautiful. Now let's take a moment to talk real quick about Lily Rose Depp. She was shortchanged in The Idol, and if this film is anything to go by, she will win an Oscar someday. And it's a damn shame she wasn't at least nominated for this film. She totes the line of a woman possessed without ever going overboard into the territory of ridiculousness. Every blood-curdling scream and fear-filled whim. When you think of career-defining performances, they should rightfully be hers. Not to be outdone, Nicholas Hoult stands his ground as Thomas, a love-struck husband, but also a man very much out of his depths.
You're doing a brave thing.
As are you. You are way out of your league, tiny duck.
You feel every ounce of love and care he has for Ellen, but there's a little more. Shema mentioned this in our podcast. Thomas seems to envy his friend Friedrich. And that sliver of envy pushes him to go through with this plan. It's almost like it helped set him off on this journey and the chain of events. It's an extra layer that I love. Now, let's talk about the big bad. Let's talk Count Orlok. Let's talk Bill Skarsgård, a man that can seemingly get lost in any monster. While The Crow happened, this run as Count Orlok damn near blew Pennywise out of the water with a menacing performance that I respect more. Pennywise is a terrifying killer clown, but somehow Bill managed to make Count Orlok terrifying. Even with this deep Transylvanian accent, he's terrifying. He hulks over everyone and is a vampire that perfectly crosses menace, intimidating, and classy, I think. It's also disturbing the way he sucks the blood from his victims. Instead of biting their necks, he bites their chest, which I've never seen that done, but it also makes sense. It's a direct line to the heart. It's oddly sensual, and definitely borderlines assault on his victims. It's disturbing in all the ways Twilight wasn't. Orlok embodies all the scariest traits of a vampire. He has lust with reckless abandonment. His desires are all that matters. It gets even worse when you stop to think that in his mind, saying no doesn't stop him. He stalks Helen. He's the worst traits of a modern day incel alpha bro. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to knock or cheapen Bill Skarsgård's performance or the magnificent film that Robert Eggers made, but in general, he has a lot of traits of a guy that you should avoid. Simply put, he's a creep. Count Orlok is the vampire your mother warned you about. There are a number of other great performances in this film, but I want to dive more into the third act and the acting of this film going forward. So, spoilers in 3, 2, 1. A plan is in place to kill Count Orlok, but Helen knows the only way to beat him is to sacrifice herself. Now, there is some odd moments, namely Count Orlok sees the sun coming up, but he goes back to drink more blood instead of running. Helen sacrifices herself to kill him just as Thomas arrives to hold her hand as she drifts off. I really enjoyed the inverse of this film. In the original, I would argue that Thomas was the main character, as was Orlok, but in this film, Helen is very much the lead and center stage. But she does not appear to simply be afflicted. She has her own agency to try and stop Orlok of her own accord. She recognizes it has to be her. Hell, we even get a moment when Helen and Thomas have relations, and it's almost like a middle finger to Orlok because she knows he is watching and she's being defiant. Bravo. Now, normally this is the part where I talk about how there are some things I may have done differently to try and improve a film, but I have no notes here. This film is such a niche labor of love. I don't know where things could have changed or been improved. This movie, as it stands, is seemingly perfect. Now, as far as cons, I don't really have any. That said, this movie would be a 9 out of 10 for me. I'm not sure how it could have been better, but I know I will rewatch it again. P.S. You should really watch this movie, and then at the part where Count Orlok gets on the boat, pause it, go watch The Last Voyage of the Demeter, and then jump back into Nosferatu. I think that's a great double feature. That said, this movie, I definitely recommend you watch it. If not in theaters, at home, it's worth it. Watch it in a very dark environment, though, and pay attention to the dialogue. I noticed upon my third watch, I was picking up things I didn't notice my first or second watch. So really take the time to enjoy this one. That said, what's been your favorite Robert Eggers film? Let us know down below. We'd greatly appreciate it. Please like and subscribe. We're trying to grow. And yeah, we'll catch y'all next time. See you, everybody.